Star Union was a local brewery back in the heyday of brewing. Star Union, originally known as the Fred Kaiser Brewery, opened in 1845. The company was started by a man named Fred Kaiser, of course. He ran the business for 15 years before selling it to Benjamin Ream in 1860. After the Civil War had ended, the brewery was purchased by Phil Link, Charles Bereder, William Mayer, Fred Schultz, and Fred Seep. This was also when the brewery changed its name to the Union Beer Company. Henry Helmig also managed the brewery at one point. In the year 1880, Henry Horner bought out all of the Union Beer Company stockholders except for Phil Link. Link became a minority leader, while Horner became the president. Horner also changed the name to Star Union Brewing Company. In the year 1918, Prohibition became a thing, and breweries were forced to quit making beer. While the beer part of the plant was shut down, Star Union decided to invest into artificial ice and soda products, such as ginger ale. They also had a line of Star Model Near beer. So did your family have any part in Star Union?
They didn't. I didn't have any family members that worked for Star Union, but my grandparents did own a local tavern, and they did serve Star Union beer, and it was considered a Star Union bar. And what by that, the brewery owned different buildings and taverns, and they would rent those buildings out with the condition that the tavern that you had served Star Union beer on draft, and it always, you could only serve that on draft in some cases, except for in the event you ran out, you were only allowed to use something else temporarily till you could get the Star Model beer. And my grandparents, they actually, I guess, would have been considered a Star Union bar. Their rent went indirectly to Star Union.
In 1927, the company switched its name from Star Union Brewing Company to Star Union Products Company, due to the diversity of what they were currently selling and what they had previously sold before Prohibition. The president, Henry Horner, retired in 1930. Upon Henry Horner's retirement, Martin Horner, Henry Horner's son, became president, while Henry Horner's daughter served various executive positions. Prohibition ended in 1933 and Star Union resumed beer production. In 1937, Martin Horner died and Catherine Ellis, Henry Horner's daughter, took over as president of the company, while Irene Horner, Henry Horner's other daughter, became vice president.
One of my favorite facts about the brewery that I think people don't realize is the fact that you had Henry Horner who owned the brewery, and once he retired, his son ran it, but then was involved in an accident. So you had Henry Horner's daughter became president of the company. So you're talking back in the 1940s to have a female that was the president of a company, and you had actually at one point you had president and vice president, both females, Horners, and then you had another family, Links, where then you had the other two officer positions filled by males. But I think it's very interesting for that time period to have a female as a president. I think it's fantastic, and it really showed a lot of Henry Horner and the Link family for recognizing that gender shouldn't play a role in shouldn't be a factor when it comes to success and being able to lead and run a successful business.
Henry Horner died on October 24th, 1940. He had served 9 terms as mayor, along with his work at Star Union by the time he had died. In 1963, a company by the name of the Canadian Ace Brewing Company, out of Chicago, purchased Star Union and continued running the brewery until 1966. Canadian Ace shut down entirely in 1968. What do you know about the different brewery buildings on Pike Street?
Well, you had the bottling house, you had the office, and from what I understand, you had also had some stables there on the property too, because they used to have two teams of horses. They called it Brewery Hill, and you'd had one team of horses that would pull those beer wagons to the top of the hill. And because it was difficult, then they would, I've read where they would switch over to a new team, a fresh team on top of the hill that would go around and deliver back before they had, delivery trucks and used horses. But they had the stables, and I do have a document, a letter handwritten by Henry Horner where he was wanted to buy a piece of property in order to expand a little bit, and I think he was offering a couple $100 because it was just ravine, and it sounded like he wasn't too happy about having to pay a couple $100 for it because he considered it to be useless property. But most, I've got pictures of the brewery, but from my own eyes, my experience, there was, just the two buildings that I remember when I was a kid.
Star Union was built on Pike Street in Peru, Illinois. It was also split by Brewster Street. As you can see here, there are about 4 main buildings, in which only one is still standing and is actually still in use as of 2019. The current building is used as a distribution center for Dresbach's Distributing Company. In late 2011, a sinkhole on the east side of Pike Street, across from Dresbach's, opened up, revealing stone-lined tunnels. These tunnels possibly connected all of the brewery buildings, in which they led to the Illinois River to get rid of leftover malt and hops from the brewing process. This area along the river was known to be a good fishing spot to the locals.
From my childhood, what I remember about Star Union was just seeing some of the old cans or the old bottles. I do remember going down what they call Brewery Hill, where the old brewery was, and on the east side of the road there was a building there with a big hole in it where from what I understand, a truck had been coming down the hill and ended up going through that and creating that hole. And I do remember that there. I remember when they tore it down. And then Dresbach's, I guess, was a distributor there, which is still there. And just some of the stories and photographs and things like that I remember from my childhood. I guess one thing that would be nice for people to know is, if they come across something like that, or something with local history, something that they may not be interested in, but preserving our local history is something that I think is very important. So if you come across an item, whether it might be something from West Clocks or something from Star Union or Peru Beer Company or something from something old from Starved Rock, old signs or whatever it might be, to hold on to that, or if they're not interested in it, make sure it gets it into somebody's hands that can preserve that. Because I've heard a lot of stories of people that had signs from local stores or from things like that they're not interested in it. They have no value to them, and they end up in a dumpster. And so I think doing your best to preserve local history is best.
Now, with local breweries gone, such as Star Union and the Peru Beer Company, the brewery scene has almost completely diminished until fairly recently. The Star Union and Star model name are quite valuable to the Illinois Valley. So with small breweries making a comeback, such as Star Union Spirits, located inside of West Clocks, we may also see a more diverse use of the Star Union name.